let's say if my pelvic floor muscles are tight, this is when you might not fully empty your bladder. What can happen? Well, there's already a potentially resting activity in the pelvic floor muscles. So that, remember, when those muscles contract, that tells the detrusor, the other muscle of the bladder that pushes the pee out, to stop contracting. So that could be potentially linked to not fully emptying your bladder. What we do for that is we have to really focus on the deep breathing component, not just while you're peeing, but also while you are throughout your day. That's where mindfulness, that's why stress is so important to get a handle on. And that's one scenario. In that case, if you can't bring it down by just bringing awareness to your state of being throughout the day, and then when you're peeing, then that's a signal, get help. The second thing is when you are a chronic holder, teachers, I'm calling you out. Me, I'm calling myself out. I delay not only the second urge, but the third urge and the fourth urge. In that case, my bladder muscle is, the bladder is getting stretched and stretched over time. Just like if I were to strengthen a squat, and I were to strengthen the lengthening period, that's called eccentric strengthening. When you're focusing on the long elongation of the muscle, when you hold P, the bladder stretching, and then it has to hold it. So that's what we consider eccentric training of the bladder. So you're making the muscle stronger there's a thought that you're making the muscle stronger and therefore it's more stiff. So that ultimately can affect your bladder function it's not as pliable, but that is to be argued by some. The other thing is, let's say you continue to do that, you're strengthening or you're filling your bladder and it's so heavy, or the bladder muscles after a while get so weak, it can't squeeze all the pee out. So the way I like to make that make sense to non-pelvic floor PTs is, you pick up, I can max squats 145 pounds today. My 1 rep max is higher, 165 or more, but if I were to do that today, I wouldn't be able to do it. I'd be able to control it down, so I'd be able to handle the pee, but I wouldn't be able to stand it all the way back up. I'd get stuck. Well, for the bladder, the bladder squeezing and not getting it all out. It's just too long and the load is too much for it to push through. So that's another issue. Those of you that are peeing constantly, this urge, you have to go every 30 minutes, that's a little more complicated and needs a little more investigation. It could be because of overactivity in the pelvic floor. It could be low-level inflammation in the bladder walls. It could be fascial restrictions along a C-section scar or previous laparoscopic scars or any other scars, gallbladder scars, incisions. It could be so many different things. And so we have to really dive into that of what's going on. It could be what you're drinking, caffeine, alcohol, acidic foods, stress. Stress increases cortisol in the body. Cortisol levels result in inflammation in the body. Inflammation in the bladder is going to irritate the smooth muscle, the detrusor, which could create more activity there. So it's not that simple. And if you're older, and I'm going to do a training specifically on this, if you have cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and you don't even have to be older. A lot of women have, not a lot of women, but women can get cardiomyopathy when they're pregnant or through the delivery. And that can be something that is contributing to a new bladder problem. Whole different topic, we're not going there today. So cardiovascular or metabolic status is so important. How your heart, your kidney, your lungs are functioning. Typically, my patients with asthma have potentially more of a predisposal to bladder issues. People that have autoimmune conditions, that's another thing, and that bleeds into some of the chronic conditions like interstitial cystitis. So urgency, that repetitive, like I have to go every 30 minutes, every 20 minutes, is not as simple as it might seem. If it was me, I know that I don't have any autoimmune conditions that right now that affect my bladder, but I do know that if I drink a lot of water and my electrolytes are off because I just hiked this amount of time, or I'm eating like crap, which I am currently, our system, our urethra, parts of the urethra, our autonomic drivers are impacted by our metabolic or the environment around that area. So molecules down to the cellular level, how much sodium is in the area, calcium is in the area. That is not to say to go take supplements. Do not do that. But that is also another factor that could be contributing to urgency. Any other key points? If you are a mom and your hormones are off, or if you're trying to lose all the baby weight really quickly and you're actually not taking in enough energy, nutrient-dense energy to replace what you're using up, you could create a problem for yourself. If it's not your bones, or if it's not your nerves, it could be something else. So nerves affect the bladder affects the nerves, so on. It's not as simple as just go and pee. Let's talk about musculoskeletal reasons, because I have an analogy that I want to share with you all because it's so freaking awesome. My first training on what is the pelvic floor, what does it do, I talked about layer 2, and I talked about this as an area of a lot of nerve compression and an area that I do a lot of manual therapy. It is where the perineal membrane lies, and that helps stabilize the bladder neck along with other connective tissue. The connective tissue is really complicated, and even experienced pelvic PTs have a hard time explaining it because it's that complicated. So I'm going to explain it with Saran Wrap. Who here hates Saran Wrap? I hate it because I can't get it clean. I mean, it just like folds over itself. I'm going to show you just by seeing different Saran Wraps, how it can affect bladder mobility. Let's say if you can't empty, it's just like, yeah, you feel like you have to push because whether or not you have a prolapse, say if you don't, your bladder neck can't move. So first one, it's already messed, folded. This was my good piece. So imagine I have this really nice piece of Saran Wrap. This is layer 2, and it doesn't have the muscles here, so just keep that in mind. I'm going to poke a hole through the urethra. And it's there. Look how nice. There's no kink in the urethra. It just can flow. So when you have to pee, it just comes out. Now, second scenario. Let's say you had an episiotomy, or you tore quite a bit around the opening of the vagina to the anus. So you see this folded Saran Wrap? That is the perineal body, so the space between the vaginal opening and the back door. And then let's put a fold here. So that's scar, okay? This is fascia, you guys, so it's like affects everything. Now, just humor me. We'll just say this is the bladder, the urethra, even though it doesn't really pan out anatomically speaking. It's not really about that. It's more about you seeing what the fascia scar tissue can do. Okay, so this is actually going to pull, the scar is going to pull the urethra because it's all connected. Layer 2 also has those 3 urinary muscles that helps kink or push the urethra against the pubic bone. So see how it's being pulled just because you had a little tearing and then also a scar. So you're not gonna, if it's pulling, you're gonna have a kink already in the system, or it's not gonna be moving as well. Okay, here's another scenario. This could either be a scar from, you know, a tear or a cut or an episiotomy, or it could be tight muscles. That can also impact. It's going to pull the urethra. It's going to make it stiff or potentially not allow it to move as well. So the whole point of that, hopefully you guys got the gist. If you have scar there, it can impact not only the urethra, but the nerves. So the nerves that innervate or give rise to your pelvic floor muscles. I'll show you, sorry, showing you the muscles here. If let's say the perineal branch nerve that serves to give you sensation and helps out in this area can't move. So now these muscles become overactive. They're already overactive because of scar not getting blood there. So they're like trigger points. Now you have a non-moving nerve. So you start to get like burning, or you start to get the urge, which before I started PT, if you pushed here, it felt like I had to pee. I was like, are you on my urethra to my PT? And she's like, no, that could be part of it. So any overactivity in these muscles can also create that need to pee all the time. I mentioned, before I forget, I mentioned that you could have urgency, or you could have issues fully emptying your bladder when you are, your bladder muscle is really stretched. Let's say it's really short and stiff, because you're pushing your pee out through your whole life. Well, you're pushing with pushing with your abs, your pelvic floor is going to tighten, but you're strong, so you're going to overcome that, and your bladder muscle could adapt, so your muscle can get bigger or more girthy in a shortened position. So now, as your bladder wants to fill, it's stiff, and your body wants to take the path of least resistance. It doesn't want to work hard, so it says, oh, I gotta pee earlier than with a lower amount of fluid than typical. So hopefully that makes sense. Few things that I didn't mention: your flow rate, it should be a steady flow. It shouldn't be a power pee like that you can hear like outside of the bathroom. It shouldn't be that. It should be steady, and it should just be consistent, you know? Like if you always had a vertical stream, and then suddenly after birth, it's like spraying everywhere, that is an indication, okay, there's something different here. Maybe I should see a pelvic PT to check it out. If you have larger labia majora, and they can get in the way of the urethra, that could change the spray too. So make sure you get those out of the way just in case. So you're not like, oh, my spray was always different, or is that not normal? It could just be your anatomy, but it also could be other things that are not, structure related. It's actually a change in the, from birth or whatever, when you have a baby. Other things that, the Saran Wrap analogy, that can happen here as well with any of those scars. So I like to refer some of my patients to a therapist that is a little bit more experienced than me with myofascial release if I can't help, because she is also trained in visceral mobilization, so moving and mobilizing the organs, and the bladder is an organ, the uterus is an organ, and that scar tissue and that fascia does affect that. I'm trying to think of anything else. I hope, pee time and amount. I mean, there's a high variability. Some people could pee half of a 16-ounce water bottle up to the 16 ounces. But typically, that first urge, you'll get it like 4 ounces, 2 to 4 ounces. And then that second urge is going to come to that around that 8-ounce mark, or even less, 5 to 8 ounces. there's really wide variability, but just pay attention to that first urge and then second urge. What's the difference if you pee on that first urge every time versus waiting to the second urge? Ideally, you're going to the bathroom every 2 to 4 hours, and you don't have to get up at night to go to the bathroom, but that is highly variable on your timing of fluids, how water dense the food that you are eating, and the timing of when you're eating it. And also age. I mean, if you're 50 and lower, 50 to 60 and lower, you shouldn't be getting up. But if you just drank a lot of water before bed, give yourself a break. Let's be real. If you are over the age of 65, research suggests that 1 time is normal. I treat 90 and above. I give them 2 times because of their kidney function, their heart function. And they just are crappy sleepers. And if you're a crappy sleeper, you're gonna have buildup and stress markers, which inflammation irritates the bladder. You're gonna have to go to the bathroom. Plus that there's a reflex in our heart that when we wake up, if we sit up or if we do something, it won't get technical, but it basically results in change in blood pressure and an area of our body stimulated, and then we have to pee because of that change in fluid. So in summary, I taught you basic function of the pelvic floor muscles and the bladder muscle with urination. I taught you that you shouldn't be pushing. You're just breathing and relaxing on the toilet. You're relaxing your feet, you're relaxing your belly, you're not in a rush. Your flow, I mean, at 20 seconds, 10 to 20 seconds, give or take 15. It shouldn't be 5 seconds or 2 seconds, shouldn't be dribbles. And then none at night, up to 1 time, depending on your age, up to 2 times if you're in that 90 and above category, or maybe even 85 and above. And other factors influence it, you know, your autoimmune conditions, your metabolic conditions, your heart, your lungs, your stress levels. You can train your bladder to be stiffer, which we don't want. You can train your bladder to lengthen, we don't want. We want a middle ground. And talked about how the fascial system in layer 2 can really impact the bladder neck. Now let's say that fascia is really stretched because of forceps-assisted delivery, of back-assisted delivery. You might have too much motion in your urethra. In that case, you might need an external support, either through a sling or something else, but I would try pelvic PT first, see if that helps, but sometimes it just doesn't. It's like if you tear your ACL completely, I'm not gonna bring it back. I will help strengthen the muscles, but that might not prevent your knee from buckling, same idea. And then I didn't go into prolapse because that's a whole nother thing.